There you go.
I'm all right. And then I will share my screen so that we can get going. Hello, everybody, and welcome to everyone jumping on. I am super, super excited to be here, and even more excited to be here with Emma Doyle. And today's Coaching Cafe, welcome, Emma.
Thank you.
Today's Coaching Cafe is all around what makes a great coach, and we're going to be, and it is all about listening. So just before we, let me click this so it works. Here we go. So just before we commence, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians of the land on which we meet today, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and communities of Australia. We pay our respects to them and to their elders past, present and emerging. I like to acknowledge that I am on Noongar land today here in Western Australia, and we pay our respects to all of the Indigenous cultures from wherever you are dialing in from. So what is on our agenda today? Well, as you know, What Makes a Great Coach book is getting ready to be launched. And today we're looking at what does legendary coach Judy Murray, OBE, think makes a great coach? And the answer that she came up with was listening. So that's what we're going to be talking about for today's webinar. As always, it's about creating community, creating shared learning experience, thought-provoking conversations, and at the end are your CCEUs, which will pop up there. So I guess to get started though is I actually might stop the share because I don't think we're going to need it up for the moment. So if you're all right with Emma, shall we stop the share and then you can see our faces? That's better. So I wanted to say congratulations on the book announcement. And for everyone on the line, I've had the pleasure of getting an early sneak peek, and I am really excited about it. It's written in this really beautiful way that makes it easy to read and is really thought-provoking as you're going through and you're reading it, going, how does that connect to me and what can I do from a coaching perspective? So I'm super excited and well done, Emma. It's going to be great when it launches. So we've been enjoying exploring the practices over the past couple of weeks. So share with us, how does it feel to be talking about the book and the practices after all this time? I know everything takes a while to get where you are. How are you feeling?
How am I feeling? That's a great question. But well, first of all, thank you for your kind words. It is very daunting as well when you give those first couple of PDFs out to your inner crew to say, hey, give me some feedback, and just like go, also, it's too late for you to say you don't like it. So I think I'm nervous. I think I feel a little bit of anxiety around that, and that anxiety is also excitement. So I tend not to live in that land of anxiety for too long. I ask myself some great coaching questions, like what's the worst thing that can happen and what's the best thing that can happen, and I move on quite quickly. And I think I just sit in this land of probably gratitude for when I personally reread it, which I've read it just a couple of times. I get the feeling where so many people have contributed. And what you spoke about earlier in terms of community and bringing people together, I feel like in this book, I've brought a lot of people together who a lot of people wouldn't have heard of, and also a lot of coaches that are quite well known, especially in the tennis world, which is obviously a heavy part of the book. It's not a tennis book, but it is heavy in the background of my experience of being a high performance tennis coach for so many years. So there's nervousness and excitement meld into one. But even I just put this backdrop up last week with this jacket, and I thought, oh, I'm going to wear that one again because that's what I'm excited about as well. All the qualities, over 500 of the world's top coaches. Yes, we've condensed it into the top 10 practices, But even on the book cover itself, which of course the proof is in my hands, which is always just like makes that real. And as you said, it's not a hard read. It's, as you see there, it's not that thick, even though I've got my virtual background on there. So I want it to be accessible. I want people to be able to go, hey, I can read this. It's not like, oh, too much for me, which is very in line with my personality. Get it done and take action. So I'm excited. Thanks for asking, Paula.
Well, that's okay, because I'm excited too. So the practice that we're talking about today is listening. And it will come to no surprise to all the great coaches on the line that listening is in the top 10 practices of world's best coaches. You kick off the practice description with a story about a meeting with a very special person. Can you and asking them about what makes a great coach. So would you care to share this interaction with us?
Yeah, so it was 2016 and I was at the Piping Rock Club, which is a very prestigious tennis club. And I had that moment where Roger Federer, yes, Roger Federer at that time was #1 in the world, and he was playing in a Pro-Am event at this club. And I was just watching the Pro-Am event because I happened to be running a clinic there. And I knew he'd have around 60 seconds between the walk from the Pro-Am to the helicopter, waiting to take him back to the US Open. It was maybe a day or two before the US Open that year. So it would have been around August, September, this time of year. And he was playing an Australian in the first round, actually. So I did ask 2 questions. The first one, I said, do you get nervous? Because I knew who was playing in the first round. This Aussie guy who'd qualified, and his ranking was obviously a lot higher than what Rogers was. And he was really humble and gracious and polite and just said, yeah, absolutely. But there's different levels of nervousness. So that was the answer to the first question. And then I'm like, okay, I've got 30 seconds. I have to ask my guiding question, which I don't think I really knew it was my guiding question back then, to be honest. I just said, can you tell me in 1 to a maximum of 3 words, what makes a great coach? And when the beauty of that question as well, Paula, in itself, if you really listen to the question, it enhances people to narrow in on what is most important, which taps so much into listening. And he said, someone who listens. Just thought I'd pause.
Yeah.
Because in the chapter, so I beg your pardon, in the practice, all our chapters are called practices. Because one of my mentors said to me very early on, she said, Emma, it's not best practice, it's next practice. And I love that little key, little reframe distinction there.
Yeah.
And in it, I talk about one of my mentors, and he talks about the power of the pause. And that was so impactful for me as a young coach, to stop and create space for learning and all these wonderful things. Damien Carmody Stevens, he was actually the Australian national kendo coach, which is Japanese sword fighting. And I had the pleasure of meeting him first year university when I was 18. What a tremendous impact he's had on my life. And he now has his own dojo down in Tasmania doing corporate kendo as well as kendo. He's a sensational coach, and he taught me that as well. So I just thought I'd add that in, because after I said someone who listens, we both paused and neither of us felt the need to fill in the space. So what a great little, and of course, we didn't talk about this off air, by the way. That happened naturally, everybody. And yeah, the power of the pause, so key to someone who listens. So please let us know in the chat box. I'd love to see if that resonated with anyone as well there.
Yeah, and when you think about the level that Roger Federer has gotten to, and that's the key message from him, I think it's one of those things that we talk about listening all the time, and in the corporate world we talk about listening, but to actually hear someone identified as their #1 and someone who's had such great success, I think it's one of those moments where you actually have to take note, like stop, take note. Okay. And for us coaches, listening is one of those things that I don't know about any of the other coaches on the line, but it's one of the hardest things I found to really build my capability in that space, because we're not actually taught to listen most of the time. We're taught to respond and to be ready for the next thing, and that listening is where it takes it that step back. So Emma, it's not only Roger Federer who said someone who listens, but also Judy Murray, who is the legendary coach and mother of Andy and Jamie Murray, who said someone who listens. Can you tell us more about what Judy said?
Yeah, well, first of all, Judy Murray is somebody who not only do I admire, she's a friend, she's a colleague, she's an exceptional coach in her own right. And the way that she listens and the way that she's able to convey her message has been one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. And especially many a time it was only her and I at conferences speaking. We were almost at a point where there wasn't a lot of female representation at tennis conferences. So we really got to know each other well. And one of the things that stands out when I listen to her is, you know, her and I even have totally different energies, yet our messages can be quite similar and impactful because of the way that she's able to reflect back, even to a journalist. She gets interviewed a lot more than me, so I'm not saying I'm on that level, but I am saying the way that she's able to listen to what a journalist says and then reflect back to them is one of the keys of listening. So is this what you're saying, or is this what I heard is X, Y, and Z? And then she's able to influence and impact on a deeper level. And so when Roger said it, and then pretty soon after I asked Judy, she said it. Then I asked Serena Williams coach, Patrick Mouratoglou, and then he said, here, you have to be able to hear what the player is thinking. And I thought to myself, that just goes beyond listening. And the only place I learned that, honestly, was in 2006 when I studied under the Open Door Coaching Group, when we had to look at body language, when we had to take a deeper dive into a congruency and alignment, and is the spoken word actually what the body language is saying they're going to commit to, even, you know, when we're talking about how you're going to move forward and what are you going to act on, what are you going to take action on. If somebody says, I'll do that, and their tone goes up at the end, which is also very Australian, by the way. It's some signs there around hearing what the player is thinking is an amazing coaching skill. And if it doesn't start from a place of listening, then you'll never be able to progress to the next level of hearing what they're thinking or feeling.
Absolutely. And Ian's asked the question, is the pause playing on people's instinct to fill the gap, or does it show you are absorbing?
Great question, Ian. I think it depends. I don't want to say a cop out there, but I think it depends from person to person. And I think it's allowing space for the person, for sure, to tap into that. Because if we keep filling the space, they'll never have a chance to tap into that gut and listening to what the gut is really talking about. And also for us as coaches as well, to be present, to be able to then show that you are absorbing. So I definitely agree with the latter, but I think it's a combination and depends on the person.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a bit from column A and a bit from column B, and how the person interprets it is a bit, it tells us a lot about them as well, I think. And if you're anything like me, that little bit of space does help you to really think about what question do I want to ask. So it's not just the first question that comes up, it's I've now considered everything that you've said, and I want to make sure this next question's really great. And that little bit of space allows you to do that.
Oh, 100%. And both Natalie and I, in putting this book together, we both admitted that we weren't exceptional listeners back in the day. And thank you, Paula, for your honesty. Yes, thank you. Anyone, feel free to, in the chat box, how are your listening skills? Because I got into coaching because I was good at helping people. I was good. I'm a people person, right? So I'm good at solving. Everyone comes to me with their problems. So I was the problem solver, and especially as a sports technical expert. And that's the other reason why I wanted to write the book. I wanted to bring the concepts of business coaching into the sports world. And I wanted the business coaches to experience the passion and the energy of the sports coach into the business coach. So really, I tried to let me rephrase the word try, because Yoda wouldn't be happy with me on that one. But I really wanted to bring the two together for people to find their own equilibrium along that continuum of listening. But I think that there's a balance for everyone and everyone that you're coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that when we're delivering the coach training, that it can be really hard for people just to sit and listen and to ask great questions. What sort of things have you done that have really enabled you to enhance those listening skills and be able to do that?
Yeah. So, well, I wanted to bring a couple of practical examples that many of us in the hybrid world are coaching over Zoom now. And I absolutely love having splitting the screen in two and pulling up a Word document, but splitting it in half. So minimizing it and sticking it over my face, because at the end of the day, it's very hard not to look at ourselves when we're talking, because we're like, well, how's my expression? What am I doing with my hands and etc. And when you cover yourself and all your energy and all your focus, and you're typing notes, but you're giving your energy to the person on the screen, you can, and I know you can only often see, say, from the shoulders up, but you can tap into even where they're accessing their information from. Can you remember a time when you were able to maximize your strength in the workplace? And boom, all of a sudden, where are they accessing that information from with the eye patterns and all those little subtleties of how they feel? Are they wiggling, or are they dropping their head? So there's still so many things we can tap into. And so that's one thing that I love to do. I think it's important that before we do a coaching session that we get really present, because no matter what's going on for us, always try and have that at least a 15-minute buffer, because when you go from one coaching session to the next, I think that you lose out just that ability for you to find your own energy, just to equilibrize. Is that a word? There you go. Just made up a new word.
You can have it.
Yeah, thanks. And basically be super present, which if we go to the listening chapter, let me just pull it out here. Might as well reference the book, Paula.
Absolutely.
We will see that. Let's go to, I say in the book, admittedly, I wasn't always a great listener, nor was I skilled at being in the moment. Former world #1 tennis player and coach Matt Wilander said, what makes a great coach is being in the present, or being present, right? So, and that's the Swedish tennis player, right? So,
yeah.
And he's a coach now. And again, you mentioned it earlier, when people of this caliber, when they are talking about what's most important, and we hear listening, being present, we have to take note and we have to work on it like a daily practice. So there's some of the things. Oh, and one more, of course, Paul, I have to mention, because it's the first time I've mentioned it. The book has a coaching toolkit, because, of course, I'm an open door partner. Why would it not have a toolkit? And the tool under the practice of listening is the agreement frames tool. So many of your experienced coaches may be familiar with this tool, but it's being able to hear something that Paula just said, reflect back to her with either I acknowledge, I respect, I heard, and actually say the words that they used, that you're really struggling with your team right now because of the deadlines that you've been placed under, for example. And then you use the word and. It's and then ask another question, or perhaps an analogy or a metaphor, share something. But just by using that tool and practicing that agreement frame tool, is one of the coaching toolkits within practice number 7, which is listening. And don't be fooled by the practice numbers, by the way, because over the 500 coaches, listening came in at number 3.
Number 3.
Number 3. So even though it's practice 7, our numbers do have, we do have a method to our madness behind why we put them in that order, which is very much to do with both Natalie and I having a discussion about the way that we wanted to present the information. But listening came in at number 3 across 500 of the world's leading coaches.
That's amazing. And I've got on the chat that Ian said he actually talks to himself silently, saying you're here for that person, it's all about them. And I think that's really important, because I think everyone has to find their own way of being present. And for myself, I'm very strong from an auditory digital perspective. And so I am constantly, you can almost see the little words going across my forehead as I'm thinking. And I really go back when I'm preparing and to really do some great listening. I start with, this is not my problem to solve. So I'm telling myself, not my problem to solve, you're here to listen. And it just moves my brain from you have to, figure out which bits are going to go with what, to step back and go, not my problem, right? So Ian, I love that you start with this, you're here for them. I sort of start with, not your problem. And it's not to say I'm abdicating responsibility. It's just to say, head, it's time to get into a different space and help this person in the way they need to be helped. But it's different for everybody. So you have to really find your space in there.
Yeah, 100%, Paul. I couldn't agree more, which does cross over. Of course, all the practices cross over for sure. Passion and energy, you could link those. The other one I just want to link that came up is practice number 8 is curiosity. And I think that's one thing I often say to myself. I'm here to be super curious about what's going on for this person. So I love that as well in my listening. The deeper my level of curiosity to discover whatever is going on, sometimes beyond that surface level, really taps into my listening skills and enhances them, because I'm bringing curiosity to my coaching. So that's just a plug for practice 8. Sorry.
Of course. And I think it links into, from your perspective, what does it mean to really listen? And you've mentioned a couple of things. I think that being present and the curiosity. Is there anything else you'd add to what listening really means?
We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And I love the quote that says, people don't really care what you know until they know that you care. And how do we show that we care? By deep level listening, which, by the way, again, if I just refer back to the book, Andy Scantlin, who's a corporate coach here in Colorado, that was his answer to what makes a great coach: deep level listening. Also, Emilio Sanchez, world #1 former doubles player. Now he runs the Sanchez Academies all over the world. Said someone who listens. World #27 tennis player, and she's a huge coach here in Colorado, Micah Babel from Germany, said listening. The list goes on. We've got Alicia Mollick. She's the Australian Fed Cup captain. She was world #8. She said someone who listens. Jen Bryce, corporate coach. Robin Soderling was #4 in the world. So that's just a couple of names out of the book. And the beauty of the book too, you can just flip to the back section and go to the coach reference. So anyone that's named in the book, their 3 words are written in the book. So,
and we've had the question, if listening is number 3, what is number 1 and number 2?
Well, first of all, if you buy the book, you'll find out. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, I'm going to reveal it. So last week, we shared the top practice, the #1 practice. So I'm just wondering, was anyone listening to the podcast last week? First person in the chat box, It was
Nicole got in first. Well done.
Yes, passion. Passion was the number one response, the number one practice. And in the book, passion is a practice number 4 in the book. And number 2 was energy. So the energy, the enthusiasm, but we're not just talking about the bravado energy. We're talking about your energy signature, the energy that you bring to your coaching and the environment that you create to help learning and help people be motivated to then want to unlock the potential that lives within themselves. So that was number 2. So they're the top 3. But there's so much more in it than just the words as well. So, and the other thing that Natalie said on the very first Coaching Cafe podcast that we did is it's not just find out the practices and think, tick that, oh yeah, I do that, or I do that. It's why we call it practice, and it's ongoing, it's lifelong, just like the opening chapter is called Being the Best Coach You Can Be, which is all about how we always need to keep on learning and be continuous learners. And I think that the practices bring that as well to life within the book. Well, that's the goal. So
yeah, and there's the old saying that practice makes perfect, and I've changed that. Wasn't my idea. I found it somewhere. I won't accept that. I won't say that I created it, but I talk with my kids about that practice makes progress, and that if we're progressing, it means we're learning and developing and moving to that, because I don't like the idea of perfection. So practice makes progress, and just like on a tennis court, the more you practice, the better your forehand gets. For me, in coaching, the more you practice and the more you progress with all the things and identifying what for you needs to be improved, you really get that progress, and your progress means that your coachees get the best as well. So I'm conscious of time, and so I just wanted to check with anyone whether or not they had any questions for Emma around listening at this stage.
Yeah, and while we're waiting for that to come in, I'll just share with everybody that Natalie will be talking about practice number 6, which in the data came in at number 5. And that's very Colorado to have a dog in the background. Thank you.
Sorry, everybody.
No worries at all. And I also just want to let everyone know that, Natalie will be sharing the practice of empathy at next week's Coaching Cafe podcast. As I said, that came in at number 5 of all the research. And in the book, empathy is at, that's practice 6 for us. And then I'll be coming in for the final week before the launch, talking about practice number 10, which is resilience. There's been plenty of times I've had to tap into my resilience, Paula, along this journey of putting a book together. So I'm very grateful to the Open Door team and to Natalie Ashdown as well. And then 8th of September, we are on track for the actual date. So if anyone's asking that question, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to find out more about the book launch, we've got both the websites up, the Open Door Coaching and the Emma Coaching, the Emma Doyle page. So if you want to find out more about the book itself, you can head there. And if you want to find out more about our certificate for in workplace and business coaching, our leader as coach, our diploma of coaching, any of those sorts of things, just head to the Open Door website. I would absolutely love to thank Emma today. There's so much to learn from her. I know I'm a little bit cheeky and having had a pre-look at the book, but I'm really excited about the book, and I think it's anything that makes you think and improve your coaching is a winner as far as I'm concerned. So thank you, Emma.
Thank you everyone for listening. That was cheeky. That was cheeky. I had to throw that in there. And don't forget, of course, I'm also running Leader as Coach and a high performance workplace coaching certification through Open Door Coaching here in the USA. So if anyone's US based, please reach out.
Amazing. I'm almost going to call that a dad joke, Emma. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and then I'll put up the CCEUs for anybody who needs them, but we will see you next week.